I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my own mind. And in the mist of tears I hid from him, and under running laughter. Up-visted hopes I sped and shot, precipitated adown titanic glooms of chasmid fears from those strong feet that followed after. But with unhurrying chase and unperturbed pace, deliberate speed, majestic instancy they beat, and a voice beat more instant than the feet.
All things betray thee who betray me.
I pleaded outlaw-wise by many a hearted casement curtained red, trellised with intertwining charities. For though I knew his love who followed, yet was I sore adread, lest having him, I must have naught beside. But if one little casement parted wide, the gust of his approach would clash it to. Fear wist not to evade, as love wist to pursue. Across the margin of the world I sped, and troubled the gold gateways of the stars, smiting for shelter on their clanged bars, fretted to dulcet jars and silvern chatter the pale ports of the moon. I said to dawn, be sudden, to eve, be soon. With thy young skiey blossoms heap me over from this tremendous lover. Float thy vague veil about me, lest he see. I tempted all his servitors, but to find my own betrayal in their constancy, in faith to him, their fickleness to me, their traitorous trueness and their loyal deceit. To all swift things for swiftness did I sue, clung to the whistling mane of every wind. But whether they swept smoothly fleet the long savannas of the blue, or whether thunder-driven they clanged his chariot thwart a heaven, clashing with flying lightnings round the spurn of their feet, fear wist not to evade, as love wist to pursue. Still with unhurrying chase and unperturbed pace, deliberate speed, majestic instancy they beat, and a voice beat more instant than the feet.
Naught shelters thee who wilt not shelter me.
I sought no more that after which I strayed, in face of man or maid. But still, within the little children's eyes seems something that replies, they at least are for me, surely for me. I turned me to them very wistfully, and just as their young eyes grew sudden fair, with dawning answers there, their angel plucked them from me by the hair. Come then, ye other children, nature's, share with me, said I, your delicate fellowship. Let me greet you lip to lip. Let me twine with you caresses, wantoning with our Lady Mother's vagrant tresses, banqueting with her in her wind-walled palace, underneath her azured dais, quaffing, as your taintless way is from a chalice, lucent weeping out of the day spring. So it was done. I, in their delicate fellowship, was one, drew the bolt of nature's secrecies. I knew all the swift importings on the willful face of skies. I knew how the clouds arise, spumid of the wild sea snortings. All that's born or dies, rose and drooped with, made them shapers of mine own moods, or wailful or divine. with them joyed and was bereaven. I was heavy with the even when she lit her glimmering tapers round the day's dead sanctities. I laughed in the morning's eyes, I triumphed, and I saddened with all weather. Heaven and I wept together, and her sweet tears were salt with mortal mine. Against the red throb of its sunset heart, I laid my own to beat and share commingling heat. But not by that was eased my human smart. In vain my tears were wet on heaven's gray cheek. For we know not what each other says, these things and I. In sound I speak, their sound is but their stir. They speak by silences. Nature, poor stepdame, cannot slake my drought. Let her, if she would owe me, drop yon blue bosom veil of sky and show me the breasts of her tenderness. Never did any milk of hers once bless my thirsting mouth. Nigh and nigh comes the chase, with long perturbed pace, deliberate speed, majestic instancy, and past those noised feet, a voice comes yet more fleet.
Lo, not content'st thee, who content'st not me.
Naked, I wait thy love's uplifted stroke. My harness piece by piece thou hast hewn from me, and smitten me to my knee. I am defenseless, utterly. I slept, methinks, and woke, and slowly gazing, find me stripped in sleep. In the rash, lusty head of my young powers, I shook the pillaring hours and pulled my life upon me. Grimed with smears I stand amidst the dust of the mounded years. My mangled youth lies dead beneath the heap. My days have crackled and gone up in smoke, have puffed and burst as sun starts on a stream. Yea, faileth now even dream the dreamer, and the lute the lutanist. Even the linked fantasies in whose blossomy twist I swung the earth a trinket at my wrist are yielding. Chords of all too weak account for earth, with heavy grief so overplussed. Is thy love indeed a weed, albeit an amaranthine weed, suffering no flowers except its own to mount? Must, designer infinite, must thou char the wood ere thou canst limn with it. My freshness spent its wavering flower in the dust, and now my heart is as a broken fount, wherein tear drippings stagnate, spilt down ever from the dank thoughts that shiver upon the sighful branches of my mind. Such is what is to be, the pulp so bitter, how shall taste the rind? I dimly guess what time in mists confounds. Yet ever and anon a trumpet sounds from the hid battlements of eternity. Those shaking mists a space unsettle. Then round the half-glimpsed terrace slowly wash again. But not ere him who summoneth I first have seen, and wound with glooming robes purpureal, cypress-crowned. His name I know, and what his trumpet saith. Whether man's heart or life it be, which yields thee harvest, must thy harvest fields be dunged with rotten death. Now of that long pursuit comes on at hand the brute. That voice is round me like a bursting sea.
And is thy earth so marred, shattered and shard on shard? Lo, all things fly thee, for thou fleest me. Lo, all things stern, piteous, futile thing, wherefore should any set thee love apart? Seeing none but I makes much of naught, and human love needs human meriting. How hast thou merited? Alack, thou knowest not how little worthy of any love thou art. Whom wilt thou find to love ignoble thee? Save me, save only me. All which I took from thee I did but take, not for thy harms, but just that thou might seek it in my arms. But which might seek it in my arms, all which thy child's mistake fancies as lost, as I have stored for thee at my home. Rise, clasp my hand, and come.
Halts by me that footfall. Is my gloom after all shade of his hand, outstretched caressingly?
Ah, fondest, blindest, weakest, I am he whom thou seekest. Thou dravest love from thee, who dravest me.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bruce Becker. This is an old sea song, Fiddler's Green. As I roamed by the dockside one evening so rare, to view the still water and take the salt air, I heard an old fisherman singing this song. Oh, take me away, boys, my time is not long. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper. No more on the dock I'll be seen. Just tell me, old shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you someday in Fiddler's Green. Now Fiddler's Green is a place I hear tell, where fishermen go if they don't go to hell, where the weather is fair and the dolphin do play, and the cold coast of Greenland is far, far away. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper. No more on the dock I'll be seen. Just tell me, old shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you someday in Fiddler's Green, where the sky's always blue and there's never a gale, where the fish jump on board with a swish of their tail, where you lie at your leisure, there's no work to do, and and the skipper's below making tea for the crew. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the dock I'll be seen. Just tell me, old shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you someday in Fiddler's Green. When you get back to dock and your long trek is through, why, there's pubs and there's clubs and there's lassies there too, where the girls are all pretty and the beer is all free, and there's bottles of rum hanging from every tree. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the dock I'll be seen. Just tell me, old shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you someday in Fiddler's Green. Now I don't want a harp or a halo on me, just give me the sound of a good rolling sea, and I'll play me old squeeze box as we sail along, with the wind in the rigging to sing me this song. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the dock I'll be seen. Just tell me, old shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you someday in Fiddler's Green.
This is the oldest song I know. It relates to the Spanish Armada and Lord Nelson fighting in 1588. It's called The Merry Golden Tree. There was a ship that sailed all on the lowland sea, and the name of our ship was a merry golden tree, and we feared she would be taken by the Spanish enemy. As we sailed upon the lowland low, sailed upon the lowland sea. Well, up stepped our cabin boy, and a likely lad was he. And he said to our captain, "What will you give to me if I swim alongside of that Spanish enemy and sink her in the lowland low, sink her in the lowland sea? Well, I will give you silver, and I will give you gold, and me own darling daughter, your bonny bride shall be, if you swim alongside of that Spanish enemy and sink her in the lowland low, sink her in the lowland sea." Well, our boy, he made him ready, then overboard sprang he, and he swam to the side of that Spanish enemy, and with his brace and auger in her side he bored holes 3, and he sank her in the lowland low, sank her in the lowland
and see. He quickly swam back to the cheering of the crew, but our captain would not heed him, for his promise he did rue. And he scorned his poor entreaties as loudly he did sue. And he left him in the lowland sea. He turned himself about and swam to the port side, and up to his messmates full bitterly he cried, "Ah, messmates, draw me up, for I'm drifting with the tide, and I'm sinking in the lowland sea." His messmates drew him up, but on the deck he died. So they stitched him in his hammock, which was so fair and wide. Then they lowered him overboard, and he drifted with the tide. And he sank beneath the lowland low, sank beneath the lowland sea.
Guilt, guilt, guilt. I'm a rabbi's son, a preacher's offspring, and I know guilt. When I was 9, we moved from bucolic, peaceful, upstate New York, Utica, New York, to Brooklyn, wartime Brooklyn, World War II. And what a change that was. From a house where we had our own bedroom to 3 of us in a bedroom apartment. The first day I was in Brooklyn, I couldn't understand what they were saying, and the teacher asked me if I spoke a foreign language. I came home that first day with 20 words. I wanted to know what they meant. And my mother washed my mouth out with soap, so I never told her those words again. It was hard. But there was one thing that saved my life, and that was the beloved Bums, the Brooklyn Dodgers. Every Sunday that they were playing, I would go to the doubleheader. They played in the afternoon those days, and I would sit in the bleachers, and I was in heaven. Well, one Sunday when I was there, the thought occurred to me, what did that unkosher meat taste like? What was that forbidden food? I looked around, looked all around, didn't see anybody I knew, nobody who knew me. Now was my time. I walked over, I put my money down, and I got that hot dog. Came back to my seat. The bases were full. Rex Barney was pitching. Everybody's eyes were on Rex Barney because he had this amazing fastball. Of course, he walked everybody. He had an amazing fastball. And when everybody's eyes were on Rex Barney, oh, it tasted awful. What was that stuff? It tasted awful. And then I realized 60,000 eyes were looking at me eating the forbidden food. Guilt, guilt, guilt. Guilt.
Me stories all the time, but stories that happened to her, unlike anybody else. So made me think probably little dust devils were around her or something to make all these unusual stories happen. Well, last week, she told me a story. We Skype each other. She's in Tennessee. I'm in Colorado. And this story was a hoot. And that's why I'm going to tell you it. My sister Fran and her husband Leon, they wanted to become more engaged in their church activities. So the church had a big covered dish, a gathering at somebody's house. And so they went. And they had a wonderful time with all the different people. And food you wouldn't believe. Now, my sister is very social. She notices everything around her, very awake. Well, while they were sitting there, the daughter of the host came in, and she whispered something into the mother's ear. Well, my sister, she just leaned in her seat like that because she wanted to know what was being said. Well, the mother jumped up just like that, like she was scared to death, and she ran into the kitchen. Well, my sister was on her heels right after her. Well, you wouldn't believe this. I mean, you won't believe it. I didn't believe it. But there on the kitchen counter was the biggest, blackest cat that you ever did see. And he was sitting like this, licking his paws, and he was a happy cat. But next, well, I was shocked when she told me. But my sister just stood there. She couldn't say anything. She couldn't move. And the mother, she just looked at the cat. But next to that cat was the biggest chocolate cake you could lay your eyes on. But the whole side of that cake was gone. No icing at all. And the cake itself had been kind of dug into, you know what I mean? Well, my sister, she was just taken. She just couldn't believe it. And the daughter, she said, "Mother, that stupid cat, that's the second time that cat's done that." Oh, and she just turned that cake around and started chopping, putting pieces on a plates and shoving them to her daughter and to my sister, and they went out and gave it to everybody. And my sister had a piece of cake, and she goes to her husband, and she couldn't say anything. And so she's standing in front of her husband, and she's kind of doing like this. And every time her husband would reach for a piece of cake, she'd do like this. And finally, he grabbed that cake and looked up at her, and he thought, my goodness, is she having some kind of a fit or something? Some kind of mental or physical? Is my wife crazy? Well, he snorfed that down, and he wanted a second one. Well, the night went on. The cat, the big black cat, disappeared. So did that big cake. There was nothing left of it. Even all of that side was gone. And everybody started going home. Well, my sister and her husband got in the car ready to go, and Leon, he just about ready to turn the ignition on, and he turned to his wife and he said, "What was going on in there? Why were you just acting so weird?" She looked at him like, that's what she did. And so she proceeded to tell her husband the whole story. And he looked at her like that. Well, there they went, down the road. And I bet you there were dust devils kicking up down the road behind them.
Even ghosts love good books. Used books, of course, with thumb-worn, musty pages, yellowed by the years. A few underlined passages that trace the path a reader, now gone, followed to meet the writer, even further gone, into the unknowable years ahead, where I sit, here in a one-room cabin in a Zen monastery deep in the California wilderness, a room just big enough for a bed and a desk and a stack of books. Hesse's Siddhartha, in the original German, a language I can't read. The lamplight flickers my memories of her across the pages. Sitting on cushions on the floor in her living room, her fingers stretched across the fretboard of her handmade Brazilian guitar, while she sang Suzanne, bringing tea and oranges in her nightgown, and told me stories late into the midnight after, tripping the mescaline highways of her acid youth, when she was a Jersey girl in Germany and had to take her sophomore year over because she couldn't understand her teachers. Hitching the Autobahn with her roommate Sana for pizza and beer in Stuttgart, or a 3-day rock festival in Mannheim, Atomic Rooster and Pink Floyd. Waking up hungover on New Year's Day in the Alps to frozen pipes, no water to brush her teeth, so brushing with Cointreau instead. All these stories that I've claimed as my own vicarious life now that she's gone. My wilted flower child. Here I sit in the flickering lamplight, stumbling through the many-storied passageways of Hesse's German, trying to trace the underlined passages back into her life, but the blue ink trail peters out in the thicket of language she learned one midnight, scrambling for a German-English dictionary to translate the dream she'd just had. There's no way back. Gone is gone. And there's a new woman now who can read Hesse without translation, a girl who grew up in Westphalia, watching Little House on the Prairie on German TV, dreaming of riding the range like a cowboy, whose father taught her algebra in school, but could never teach her how to solve for the unknown why her mother threw herself off the top of a dam on Mother's Day. The stories dance across these unreadable pages. And I don't know who I should ask before I give away a dead woman's copy of the life of Buddha. It's just a book, and I can't read it, but I can't seem to give it away either. So here I sit, flipping through the pages, chasing shadows. And then a strange tremor, as if someone is resting her hand on my shoulder. Maybe it's time.
I was sitting, no, well, sorry. I will be presenting a story, The Magic Door by Isabel Nicole Parker. Go ahead. I was sitting in the orphanage eating asparagus, and there was someone that I wanted to be my mother. But she picked another girl instead of me. So I thought to myself in a very disappointed voice, why did she pick her instead of me? So then I heard my teacher say that we're going to have a field trip today. So then I go to my friend and said, did you hear that? And she said yes. Then we get on the bus. Then I asked her, do you have all your stuff? Not right now. And then I asked her, do you have any important spells? Not right now, they're all in the trunk of the bus. Well, do you want to have them stolen again? But she said they would be nice and safe. So then I heard the bus driver say that the bus has stopped and it's time to get off. So we get off the bus. Ah! What's the problem? What's the problem? I thought it was going to be way happier, and it wasn't going to look like a very scary graveyard, and a very sneaky one too. So then we went to go find a spot to put our stuff. And then she screamed, ah! What's the problem? There was a big glowing light over there that was shaped as a door. Well, what's so scary about that? I don't know, I asked her. And then I told her that we should go in the door, which we shouldn't have. And then we went in the door. And then it went creak and shut behind us and disappeared. And then I asked her, well, we were nervous, so we are nervous eaters. And so it was lunchtime. And so then she asked me what we were having for lunch, and we were having steak. Yay, she replied. And then suddenly a woman appears and says, you are my children. And then me and my friend said, we have a mother. Me and my friend said in a very happy voice, we have a mother, we have a mother.
You can never leave.
Now I'll tell you another story on Storyville on how they get out of the haunted house and the room next time on Storyville. Bye.
Bella, this story I'm going to tell you is it's about some children just a few years older than you. And the story is called Flower Babies. How do I tell this story about my son and the boys and the kid across the street? It's not just about the boys, really, but about the town and the people of the town. Our town, remember that one? Early 20th century? Well, it was our town, all right, with some of those same things in place, the soda fountain. And next to it, my son playing the Pac-Man, chomping away at my quarters. Often wondered how many of my quarters the Pac-Man ate. Aptly called, by the way. It was our town, all right. Late 20th century, with some subtle changes. During the time that we lived there, the police changed their markings from to serve and protect to pride and professionalism. We lived on 4 corners, 2 streets intersecting. We lived at the crossroads. Now, standing on the one corner, I could see the other 3, but not the one I was standing on. Now, across the street was Christ Christian Fundamentalist Church, with its tall steeple and years of white coats of paint on its lap siding, looking very New England on this western landscape. And on the diagonal, a 2-story small-town apartment building, out of which the Vietnam veteran would wheel himself daily, at first accompanied by his wife. And then, directly across the street, was Bud's house, with their Australian dingo dog that would furiously bark and then fiercely charge every passerby, breaking his teeth on the chain link fence that surrounded the large yard that had once been a farm, in which stood the ancient trees too old to mention the past for fear of being cut down. There was something about the town. It was lined in vein with irrigated canals. The ditch, as the old cowboy called them, and the giant cottonwoods that grew along their banks, their branches reaching across the canals like lovers that had long since been apart. And I liked it. Among the cottonwoods and the ditches and the houses big on one side of town and small across the tracks where the Mexican pickers had once and some still lived, when the town was a thriving agricultural community. Winter wheat, summer corn, sugar beets, and potatoes. And a sugar beet factory that still ran when we first came to town, casting a foul odor of burning sugar beets across town every fall. And the mountain that so oversaw that town was called Storm Mountain. And the storm seemed to burst right out of that mountain and come crashing through town and scatter themselves on the plains. And the sacrificing waters from the storms nourished the crops of winter wheat, summer corn, sugar beets, and potatoes. And the crops would grow, and the children would grow. And they were often fatherless or motherless, or they were separated or divorced like myself, or they were veterans from one of America's endless wars, or they went to a place called the office and came home too tired at night, or they were artists on the lam from the city like myself, or they were hippies that outlived their time. The crops would grow, and the many children would grow, and they would go to school and play baseball, and the girls would play baseball too. And it was the end of the good times. The free times were over. And that same old fist was coming down, and they were planting a heavy heel around the perimeter of things. The town was small by present American standards, nestled and cradled between the Colorado High Plains and the Rocky Mountains. And I liked it. It was a respite for me, a refuge. The little house on Rose Street with Daddy, daughter, and son. But Daddy was always on the move, or perhaps I would have seen things sooner. But could it have mattered? Could it have made a difference? That's the question. The almost hurricane winds blowing the dust through the glass window panes, and the searing heat of the wheat and corn plains, and the dust devils spiring off the plains like angry women upside down in skirts with no feet. And in the winter, a blanket of snow. And you could ski from the mountaintops to the wheat fields. And then the tumbleweed was piling up on the snow fences. And you knew it was spring. And there was a ruckus right outside my front door. And the boys were fighting. And when I opened the door, it was over. And Bud was introducing himself as the upright Boy Scout Western self. And he and my son naturally became friends. He was a kid from across the street. He even tried to date my daughter, but she was a little too old for him and put him off. I always wondered why he called his boat the Jolly Roger. That was before the time I was literate, the time of making boats, of toys, and then of rafts, and now the Jolly Roger, in which we would be a boat that could sink. End of story for now. However, this story will be continued next time on Storyville. And Bella is going to write another story and tell us how the girls and their mother got out of the haunted house.